Now. All right. I hope everyone is doing well. We are sorry, or we apologize if you logged in early. I mistakenly put 11 a.m. Eastern Time instead of 12 p.m. So if you logged in early, we apologize for that. Uh, you will get to see this recording. Obviously, you may be watching this as a recording. So I'm here today with Farrukh. We seem to be having some technical difficulty, so he may be coming in and out. Hopefully, it's more in. My name is Michael Williams. This is Farrukh. As soon as we can get him in clear, and today we're going to be talking about actually a few common mistakes, but there's one big one that we want to go over with you that prevents people uh, from improving their speech, but not just their speech, but many other things. So many other goals that people set, new skills that they're developing, new habits. This one big mistake is the one that can either slow you down or stop you. And so once you know what it is, it's going to be a lot easier for you to prevent it, right? Or to address it when it does happen. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Uh, let's take a look. I just want to make sure. Okay, so if you have questions, please feel free to ask those. You can go ahead and put those in the chat if you're watching this on YouTube Live. You can enter them in the chat and we should be able to see them. Again, we are having a little bit of technical difficulty. So let's get started then. Let's see if we can get Farrukh back in here. Okay, Farrukh, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I hope you guys can see and hear me fine. Is it
Yeah,
so?
I can see
Great.
you now. Yeah. If it freezes up again, just go out and come back in. So
Okay.
yes, I've already introduced us and the topic that we're going to talk about today. So the one big mistake that you and I talked about was what? What's one thing that you and I have found that we do that other people do that prevents them or slows them down, sometimes just stops people from improving their speech?
Hmm. Great question. Uh, on this, as you said, so there are a whole lot of things that we discussed, and there are a whole lot of mistakes that people make when they are working on their speech and even when they are in the system. So these are some of the mistakes which I made, which many of the clients made,
I think, hey, Farouk, I think your video froze again. Yeah, it's frozen. So let me pick up where he left off. Uh, yeah, so this one big mistake that we find has to do with inconsistency. So I'm just going to type this in here. Inconsistency or a lack of consistency. Okay, inconsistency or lack of consistency. This is the big one. And the reason it's so big is because it can impact you in various ways. So let's talk about some of the ways that you and I both can be inconsistent. Okay, Farouk, are you back?
yes, I hope I am.
Yes. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah,
So
great.
I started talking about inconsistency or lack of consistency. So what can you say about that? And if your video cuts out, then I'll just keep going.
Okay, sure. So that is, I think, the one of the biggest mistakes that we have, that sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of the times when we are working on something that is hard, that requires more and more effort. So sometimes what we see is that when we start to work on it, we are very, very confident about it. We feel like it's going to work for us. But I don't know why, after working for some time, we start to slack off. We start to slack off. Like at the start, we are really doing the work. We really want to work on it. Here in this case, we are talking about speaking. So we are really working on our speech, and we see that we are making great improvements, great progress. But what happens is that after a while, when we see that maybe it's working quite well for us, maybe it's really helping our speech and we are speaking very well. So, what happens after some time is that maybe we stop working on our speech or stop working on our speech as much. We feel like, okay, now we are fine and now we are not going to get stuck. So, we have to maybe just stop working, or we don't work as much. Likewise, what also happens on one hand is that, let's say someone starts the system, and because of the placebo effect, which Mr. Michael explains, you really really experience great success in your speech. And after a while, you start to slip back off, which is very, very normal when you're doing anything new, when you're changing a habit. You have to experience the highs and the lows. That's a part of the process. So when we experience the high, we feel quite great, we feel quite hopeful. But after a while, when someone starts to slack off, maybe they start to go a bit down, then they start to also just doubt that the system works. They start to really doubt whether it's going to work for them. So even then they stop working on their speech as much. So we have these two cases. On one, someone is speaking very well and they feel like now they should stop working, and on one hand, someone feels like maybe it's not working for me as much, so they stop working. Whether it's working for you or it's not working for you, it has to work for you. You just have to realize it, that you have been speaking in the old way for a long, long time, and you have to be very consistent. If you have to change your speech, you have to repeat it, you have to do it over and over and over again in order to really get this new speaking style into your brain. So I think this is a mistake that most of us make, that I also made. When I got into the system, I experienced great improvements, but after a while I slacked off. But only when I saw that I'm not maybe doing as well as I should be, then I just got back into the system. Then I said that I'm going to do it each and every day. So it's not important how much you do each day, but the most important thing is that you do it each and every day. You have to be very consistent. So that's how it goes, actually.
Wow. Yeah. So you said a lot of stuff, some of which I'd like to unpack a little. We'll start with the last thing you said. So it's not as important how much you do each day. It's more important that you do something each day. So what's the something that we're talking about here? Well, we just happen to be talking about the Pro 90D smooth speech system. And we have a daily routine, a daily blueprint of activities. And this has been, if you will, tested over the last decade or so, right? And it works. If you do it, and we've just seen thousands of people go through it, and we can see that when people are consistent and they do it every day, so forth, that it just works. So when we say that you're consistent, consistent at what? The daily routine. There's about 8 things that we ask you to do. Now, uh, your statement, it's not as important how much time you spend. So, yes, you can flex the amount of time that you spend on those activities. So, one day you might be tired, you might not feel like doing something, then just do it for a minute, do it for a couple of minutes, do it for 5 minutes. Now, ultimately, you're going to spend more time on those activities so that you can accelerate the process. It's all about how we learn, how our brains create um, new connections and strengthen those connections. So you've probably heard me talk about, and you've heard this before, neuroplasticity. So our brains are able to change. They're able to create new neural connections and or strengthen other ones and weaken other ones. And essentially, this works with where when two neurons fire together, that is, they are communicating together, and that network of neurons that are communicating, those are the ones that manage or control whatever the activity is that you're trying to do or learn. So if it's speaking, right, you have a network of neurons in different parts of your brain that manage speech. So if you need to create a new way of speaking, which you will, and a new way of thinking, then you've got to actually start having, if you will, a new network of neurons communicating with each other. And they won't communicate, they won't strengthen their communication if you're not consistent. Neurons that fire together wire together. So the more often they fire together, the stronger and faster they wire together, meaning you have to be consistent. So each day, whatever it is that you're doing, the activities, the more you do it, the faster and the stronger those neurons wire together. So that's why his statement is absolutely true. You can flex it, but the main point is that you're consistent, that you do it every day, even if it's a little bit, right? And you said something else about the placebo effect. You also talked about how sometimes people start and then they see progress and then they see a dip and they get discouraged, right? So I think we had mentioned before that this is somewhat related to their expectations, like what they expect to happen. Then when it doesn't happen, they get discouraged. So what's one or two expectations? We'll call these kind of false expectations. What are some things that people expect when they are working on their speech, when they join Pro 90D or any other program? What are some false expectations that can set them up for possible failure?
Hmm. Uh, there are, I think, a lot of false expectations that we have.
Mm,
And I think some of the main ones are that when you get into the system, you expect something like, I'm going to get rid of stammering in a week, in some time, maybe in a month.
mm,
And that's how it actually goes in our minds, that if we are starting a system, like we are just getting into this Pro 90D speed system, so sometimes we expect that we are going to get the results very, very quickly. But that is not how things actually happen. As we have seen, like we have been speaking in a certain way for a long time, and our brain has created a habit of speaking in that way, and it is a very strong habit. So we are replacing that strong habit with a new habit, and in order to make this new habit strong, we have to make sure that we are pretty much consistent, and we have to expect that we are going to fail. That old habit is going to get us back. Then we are going to use this new style, and then the old habit once again is going to get us back. So we would have to keep doing this dance for a while
mm,
after we really start to see that now it's really happening for us, or now we don't have to work as hard to use our new speaking style. Like for me, or for many of the Pro 90D speech system students, they have experienced that after they keep working, they keep working, what happens is that your new style starts to become your own speaking style, and your old speaking style is not, what's the word, your old speaking style is something that you're not using now, and you do not have to work quite hard to use this new speaking style. It is just something that happens on its own. Like right now, while I'm speaking, I'm not really focusing on any skill or anything specific that we have inside the system. I have really trained my mind over the last few years, and most of it, if not all of it, is just happening on its own. So you have to expect that it's going to really take time, and it's good if it takes time. Since the more time it takes, the stronger the habit would become, and the more would it help us. So you have to expect that you are going to fail. So this, I think, is the number one false expectation that we have. And one more thing, I think, which is related to it, is that many of the people join the system with a negative goal. They join the system with a goal in their mind that I have to get rid of stammering. So, how our minds actually work is that what you are focusing on, it would grow. If you're constantly focusing on, I don't have to get stuck, I don't have to get stuck, or I have to get rid of stuttering, what you're doing is that you are focusing on stuttering. You're focusing on stammering more and more. And since you're focusing on it more and more, it would start to really grow and you're going to experience more of it. So, the main reason why the system actually works is that it shifts your focus from focusing on trying to get rid of stuttering, which is a very negative goal. It
Mhm.
shifts your focus from that and onto that I have to smooth out my speech. I have to become an excellent speaker. I have to become an amazing speaker. So when you are focusing on this positive goal, that stammering and stuttering just takes care of itself. So this is the main reason why the system works. And you have to make sure that you are not here with some false expectations, as they are not really going to help you. You have to expect the reality. And the reality is that you have to be pretty consistent and it's going to take time, but it's worth the effort.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you said that very, very well. So, a few highlights. One, you have to expect failure. We can use other words. You can expect what I call bumps in the road. You're going to hit some bumps, you're going to hit some potholes, some ditches, right? Um, that's just going to happen, and they're going to happen more in the beginning than later on. You have to expect that it's going to take time to see consistent changes, right? Especially if you're consistent. Even if you're consistent, it's still going to take some time before you see positive, consistent change. I know some people are probably wondering, well, how much time? It really depends on you and how much time you put in. But on average, we see people getting, like, I see my coaching clients make changes week to week. So I start with them this week. 1 to 2 weeks later, if they've been following the routine, we see a tremendous change in their speech. Even if they're severe, 1 to 2 weeks later, they're speaking a lot smoother. Often within 3 weeks, they're like 80% smoother, 80%. Right. Now, to make that more consistent, then it's going to take, a couple of months, a month or two. To turn it into a habit can take several months, maybe even a year. It will start to become a habit, right? Within 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, it'll start. But when it gets to a place where it's habitual and you're not really thinking about it, that can take you several months, 4, 5, 6 months, 8 months, a year. But so what? It doesn't matter. You have your whole lifetime, right, to experience the benefits of smooth speech. There's lots of different benefits that we experience when we're speaking smoothly. That some of them are psychological, emotional, mental. So we improve our mental health. Obviously, many of them are professional. You get better jobs. In fact, just had a guy email me LinkedIn. In fact, I put up a video about this. He was using self-study. He's now saving up because he's just got a new job. He's saving up to do the coaching so he can go to the next level. But he was doing the self-study, and in a relatively short period of time, he interviewed. The interview went well, and he was offered a job making $15,000 more than his old job. Now, his speech, you may say, oh, well, he probably really didn't start. No, he actually bought the delayed auditory processing device, right? Or delayed auditory feedback device. So he stuttered so much so that he bought that device, and then he started taking Pro 90D, and he was able to get a better job. So that's a great investment. So you can see results pretty quickly, but if you come in with an expectation that I'm going to get rid of or stop stuttering, I'm going to be able to do it in a week, 2 weeks, or a month or 2 weeks, you're going to be disappointed, and then you're not going to be as consistent, right? So that's just, these are things that happen. So what else? Inconsistency is the big one. And then we talked about expectations, and we talked about the daily routine. So let's talk about the daily routine a little bit. What are some of the challenges or mistakes that you see people make with regard to the daily routine, the activities that they need to do each day to actually change their speech and change their thinking, their mindset, we call it.
Sure. So actually, what happens is that inside this Pro 90-day speech system, we have a list of things that we have to do and that we have to work on a daily basis. But what happens is that one mistake that we make right here, one mistake that I think most of us make, is that we are not following the whole daily routine. Like we are working on one thing and we feel like this next thing is maybe not for us, or it seems hard, so we should just do this one thing. We are doing some of the things inside the daily routine, but we are not following the whole daily routine. For example, we are working on the speaking skills, maybe all of the speaking skills that we have inside the system, be it inflections, extending, all of the skills. But maybe we find that we are not modeling, we are not really wanting to model because we feel like it's fake, we feel like it's something that we are not used to doing. It feels like I don't want to change my speaking identity, I don't want to change who I am. So sometimes these sort of thoughts are experienced when we are following the daily routine. So maybe we are not doing the whole part of it. We are doing some parts, we are doing some steps, and we are going to see those results. But in order to see consistent results and in order to see great amount of improvements, you have to make sure that you're following the whole daily routine, as each and every single thing which is present inside the system needs to be followed. There are steps like week one you have to work on this, then the next week you have to focus on this. So these are some things that you have to do on a daily basis. And if you are wondering what is the daily routine, there are a whole lot of things, and the main things are basically listening to the audios in the system, watching the videos in the system, then practicing the modeling clip that we have, then practicing modeling on a daily basis, practicing the speaking exercises, and all that we have inside the daily routine. But you just have to make sure that you're following the whole of it. You're not following just one part here, just one part here, and you feel like, oh, that's hard. And maybe that's something which is quite easy. So maybe I should do this right now. And so this is something that we
Mhm.
don't have to do. And one more thing I think is that sometimes you feel like I get stuck while saying my name. So I just want to
Mhm.
say my name. I'm inside the system because I just want to say my name or I just want to say this. So what you are doing is that you're having a wrong approach. You're still focusing on trying to get rid of stuttering or stammering, and you are focused on just certain words that you need to work on.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
those are some things that you might need to work on, but once you work on this once you work on this holistically, once you
Mhm.
work on this system on a whole basis, all of those small things are going to take care of themselves. So
Yeah,
this is something that you have to realize, and you have to follow the entire daily routine.
that is a great point. I want to highlight and affirm a couple of things that you just said. And this is quite normal. People, they have a particular challenge, right? The challenge could be physical, speech wise, it could be psychological. Usually it's both. I have a problem introducing myself, saying my first name or my last name. I have a problem saying these letters, these sounds, these words. And of course, it interferes with me, at work and social situations. So I need to fix this. I need to get rid of this or whatever. So they come to Pro 90D, and that's what they're fixated on fixing those particular issues or that issue, which is normal, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Where the problem comes in is that they look for the techniques or the strategies within the system to fix just those things. So maybe the free flow speaking exercise. Oh, great, I'll just do that. Or extending, stretching, whatever you want to call it. We call it extending. Extending my words. I'll just focus on that. Or breathing, right? And so, as you said, it's a holistic system. And the truth is, you will never know. And I'll back up and say not never, but often you will not know which part of the system is helping you in any particular time. So sometimes you'll know, okay, wow, when I started breathing or when I started blending or linking my words, that really helped me. Yes, that may be true. What you don't know also is that the affirmations were helping you. The audio you were listening to, the modeling also helps you to be able to execute or use that breathing technique, right? And you wouldn't really know that. So that's why if you leave something out and focus on just one technique and you don't do the other stuff, you may very well be leaving out an important part of the foundation that you need to smooth out your speech to be able to say your name, to say those letters. I've seen this happen again over the past decade. Literally, I've watched this happen. So, just as Farrukh said, it's very, very important to do the whole system, everything, starting from number one, the affirmations, all the way down through the modeling. And here's something else that people have to be consistent with, that is getting out, and we call this public practice. So there's private practice where you're practicing on your own, where often you can do well, right? You're on your own, you're practicing, you're doing this stuff, you're speaking well. But it's when you get out and you talk to people, people in authority, people you don't know, family, friends, your classmates, your your work colleagues. When you actually talk to them, that's when everything changes. So an important part of the system is that you are consistently trying to use what you're learning, your new speaking style, both privately, yes, but equally, if not more importantly, in public, right? You have to get out and try. It's just like learning a new language. You have to get out and try to use it with real people in real life. And yes, you are going to fail, but that's, as you said, it's a part of the process. You have to expect that. But the system really is not going to work if you're not out there talking to real people and trying to use your new speaking style. So, great point. Now, here's something else that I think you and I talked about the other day. This idea of when you are with family and friends or with certain people and you feel like, oh, this is strange. So, say a
Yeah.
little bit more about that.
Yeah. That is also something that I think we would see as a big mistake that most of
Yeah.
us make. And that is that we feel like we have been speaking in a certain way for a long time with our friends, with our family members, especially. So we feel like we, as well as them, we both have gotten used to it. So even after you see that the new speaking style is working for you, but you feel like you only have to use the new speaking style when you have to use it for sure. For example, you are in a high pressure speaking situation, you are in a meeting, you are giving you are giving a presentation, you are in front of your boss. Only then you feel like now I have to speak well, and so should I use this new speaking style? And with our friends and family, we feel like, oh, we have been speaking in a certain way for a long time,
Mhm.
and we have gotten quite used to it. In fact, they have gotten quite used to it. So we feel like we should just keep going in the same way. And that is a big mistake. And the main reason for that is if you're not using this new speaking style in low to medium pressure situations, like when you feel at ease, you are with your family, you're with your friends, you are at ease. So if right there you're not using that new speaking style, and if you go out in a high pressure speaking situation and there you feel like now I have to use it, it's not going to work. It's not going to really work, since you have to make yourself quite used to it. You have to move step by step where you're using it and seeing the results in low pressure, then you move on towards medium pressure, and then you move on towards high pressure.
Mhm.
If you're not using it in low pressure speaking situations, it's not going to really work when you are under a whole lot of pressure. So make sure when you are changing your speech, when you are really just getting this new speaking style into your brain, you have to use it each and every time you speak. As Mr. Michael says, each and every time you open your mouth to speak, it's an opportunity for you to practice. So you have to make sure that whenever you are speaking, you are just practicing it more and more. You have to be practicing it by yourself more and more, and then you have to go out and use it. If you're not using it when you go out, then what you are doing when you're by yourself, it's not really helping you. It might be helping you to some extent, but the
Right.
main results are going to come when you go out and use it. And you have to use it in each and every single speaking situation. So yeah.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, I see this with my clients that they will either understand initially or they understand eventually that I have to use this with everyone. That is my family, my friends, my kids, if they have children. I have to use this style with everyone. Why? Well, it goes back to how our brains work, right? So when you're in low pressure or no pressure, you're more relaxed. And each time that you open your mouth to speak, you're speaking. And therefore, if you want to be able to speak differently, you need to be practicing or using this new speaking style so that you can do what? Strengthen this new neural network that represents this new way of speaking and thinking, right? So the more they fire together, the more they wire together, which means if a whole bunch of the time you're speaking with your family and you're not using your new speaking style, that means you're not strengthening this new neural network. So then when you go out and you say, oh, I'm going to the office, or I'm making a phone call, I'm going to order coffee, or I have a presentation interview, now I need to use it. Well, guess what? The whole time, the whole other 5 hours, you were not strengthening the new neural network. So it's simply not going to work for you. It's either not going to work or it's not going to work well, or it's going to be very inconsistent. So it's very, 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 very important to use the new speaking style all the time. And so we say every time you open your mouth to speak, it's practice time. Every time is practice time. So look at it. Oh, and with my family, I got to practice my new style. Now, some of the challenges are, as Farrukh said, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel weird to you, and it might seem a little weird to them, right? Just because you might be speaking a little slower or you're speaking differently. But it's usually, man, I'm going to say like 98% of the time, it's not so different that people say, "Ooh, that's strange. That just doesn't sound." Usually people are like, "Wow, you're speaking much better." I mean, I have clients right now. One guy from Australia, he said it almost makes him tear up because now he's been struggling with his speech severely for decades. He's a PhD student. He says now he's able to carry on complete conversations with his family, where he wasn't able to do that for the last 2 or 3 decades. I mean, imagine that. And now he's able to carry on conversations because his brother went through the program and recommended him. Now he's going through the program. Now he can have fulfilling conversations with his parents, his girlfriend, and say complete sentences and articulate his thoughts. So the point is, he's able to do this with his family, and he's also able to do it with his friends, and he's able to do it on a professional level now. So he's been consistent. Very, very important. Uh, Anything else you want to add? We do have a couple of questions. So let's see. So I just wanted to get in here to the comments. So one person said that they found our channel and they've been binge watching. So that's good. I also wanted to share Farrukh's channel. We'll put a link to his channel in our description. Farrukh is now in training to become a speech coach. He's been with us for a while. As you can tell, he's uh, very knowledgeable, and he's been in training, so he will be also doing speech coaching. And so those of you that may be interested in that, you can get in contact with us and we'll let you know when that will be possible and how to make that happen. But he also does videos in your own language. So what's the language that you do some of your videos in, Farrukh?
Yes, Mr. Michael. So, as Mr. Michael said, I have my own YouTube channel as well. And what I do right there is that I have seen how this pro-entity speech system has helped me. So the main idea behind making that YouTube channel was to really just let the people know more and more who are struggling with their speeches, who have no hope, and who feel like that this is something that they are going to that they feel like that they are going to stick with for the rest of their lives. So just to give them hope and just to let them know that there is pro-entity speech system that can bring them out of it. I do those videos on YouTube, and that's both in English and my own language, which is Urdu, and which is also Hindi, basically. So I do those videos in both the languages, and so far the whole response has been quite great, and I would like to really do more and more of them. And what I'm doing right there, I am sharing my own journey with the prone entity speech system. I'm sharing with them what is present inside the system, what they need to work on, how they can get into the system, how it worked for me, how it worked for most of the students that are there in the prone entity speech system. So I would like for you all to go out and just check that out as well. And I hope you find the video as well. So yes.
Very good, very good. So we have a couple of comments. One comment is that someone says they find it hard to visualize themselves not stuttering. Um, Now, that's a good point for a couple of reasons. Number one, sometimes people find it hard to visualize in general. That's why we've developed a technique called verbalization. We won't explain it here, but it's in the system. So buy the course. Buy the course. In fact, I'm going to just go ahead and put that banner up there. Yeah, that's a self-study right there. So get the course, and you'll be able to see what we mean by verbalization. Give me just a second here. Okay, so verbalization. If you have a problem visualizing, you can verbalize. But the second point that we want to make is the comment is, I have a hard time visualizing myself not stuttering. That's a negative, right? So what we want you to focus on, instead of trying to see yourself not stuttering, and we understand exactly what you mean, but you want to focus on seeing yourself speaking well, speaking smoothly. How do we do that? Well, what does that look like? What does that sound like? How would you describe yourself speaking smoothly? Modeling. Here you have someone who's speaking smoothly. You just try to copy the way there's. So everything in the system is designed to not help you not stutter, or focus on how you don't stutter or don't block. Everything in the system is designed to help you speak smoothly and clearly and calmly and confidently. So everything that you say, everything that you think, everything that you write, everything that you do is focused on what? Speaking smoothly, right? So if you can define what that looks like, what it sounds like, then you can talk about it, you can visualize it, you can practice it. It's a positive goal. So that's a great comment. Thank you for that. So we do have a solution. If someone says it's hard for me to visualize myself not stuttering or speaking smoothly, we have solutions for that. What else? Let me see if there's anything else in here. You guys give any advice about talking on the phone? Okay, so I'll I'll turn this over to Farooq. What I do want to say is that we have a module in the program specifically dedicated to talking on the phone, but it's a holistic system. And so everything that you do helps you to not just talk on the phone, but to talk anywhere that you want, to say what you want, when you want, the way that you want. But we do have a module devoted to talking on the phone. So, Farouk, what advice can you give people about talking on the phone, which is can be different, right, than speaking with someone in person?
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, so this is also something which I have found for myself, and most of the people who really struggle with their speeches, they find it a bit hard when they have to speak on the phone. And the reason why they find it hard, because that is also just a habit that we have developed. Whenever we start to get on the phone, or whenever the phone rings, or we are going to really make a phone call, we start to feel very anxious, and we start to feel like we are going to have a bad time, we are going to have a bad experience. So the main reason that Mr. Michael spoke, that what you are focusing on matters a whole lot. If you are going onto the phone and you're focusing on, I hope I don't get stuck, or I hope I do not have a hard time, then you are going to have a hard time. So you have to change what you are focusing on. And especially about speaking on the phone, there is a whole section inside this Pro 90 speech system, and where Mr. Michael explains each and every bit of stuff, like how do you get started speaking on the phone, and once you get started speaking, how do you flow into your conversation, what if you are making the phone call, what if you are receiving the phone call. So in that section, all of that is mentioned. And if I were to mention just one or two very important things, one of the things is that which happens not only while speaking on the phone, but when we are speaking to someone live as well, but especially while speaking on the phone, is that we feel a need to really speak fast. We feel like we have to just get started, and we have to go on and on and on. So one of the best advices that I can give to you right here, that you need to really train your mind to relax and slow down. You have to train your mind to relax and slow down. And how do you relax? How do you slow down? There are a lot of speaking skills for it. How do you change your mindset? That is something that we have there inside this Pro 90D speed system. But as Mr. Michael said, it's not only based on one single situation, it's a holistic system. So once your whole speech starts to change, whether you are speaking live now, whether you're speaking on a Zoom call, whether you're speaking on the phone, you have this new speaking style with you, and you're using this new speaking style, and that is what actually helps. So I hope it makes sense.
Very good. Thank you, Farouk. Abdullah, uh, who's used to be one of our self-study students, did the coaching, and he asked a question here. I find that in the advanced stages of speech, the less importance you put on your speech, the smoother your speech becomes. Excellent point, Abdullah. Yes. So as you begin to move through the process and you start developing your new speaking style, then you shift away from thinking about techniques, strategies, and thinking about your speech. You have to shift away from that and actually shift your focus from you to the other person or to the people, which means you stop thinking about yourself and your speech. You start thinking about how you can connect with, how you can be present for, how you can impact other people with what you have to say and the way that you're saying it. So your focus shifts from internal, from you, outward to other people. Shift away from thinking about your speech because now you developed a new speaking style. Now you want to use it. If you continue to think about your speech, even in a positive way, you just continue to think about your speech and how you're speaking and how you're going to speak, then what can tend to happen is you can trip up a lot. You can trip yourself up and you can find yourself um, being preoccupied with speaking, or when you make a mistake, when you're disfluent. We're all going to be disfluent. Every last one of us. We're going to have times of disfluency. You will find that if you're thinking too much about your speech, you'll be even more disfluent. So, great point, Abdullah. You do need to shift away from that and focus on, again, being present, how you're going to use your speech to impact other people. Sometimes you're going to have to ignore some disfluencies, right? Because they are going to happen. Someone else had another question about what causes stuttering. Well, you know, uh, does anyone really know? Well, yeah, there probably are some people who have gone in and studied people who stutter and taken a look at the brain and seen that in some people, this is what causes. Maybe there is too much of a neurotransmitter, or in some cases, there's not enough of a neurotransmitter. In some cases, it's brain damage or a stroke. In other cases, it's completely psychological. Something happened, some kind of experience. And so there's lots of reasons why people stutter or stammer. Our approach is that it doesn't really matter why. You can spend decades trying to research and figure out why. And unless you're a scientist who can go in and create something like a drug or an operation that addresses that particular cause or source, unless you're a scientist, knowing why isn't all that helpful. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but it's not as helpful as knowing how to change it, how to address it, how to overcome it, how to replace it. So we focus all of our attention and resources on how to overcome it, how to replace it. That's going to help you so much more than why. And so I hope that makes sense. It's interesting to try to figure out why, but there are different reasons for different people, right? Even people that have had strokes, through speech therapy, their brain is able to reconstitute other areas of the brain, that is, go out and borrow the resources from other areas of our brain to help them speak well. Okay. So our brains are fantastic. And so, okay, this person's stuttering because of a stroke, right? But that doesn't mean that they can't speak well, because you just have to know what to do consistently to help them speak well. So hope that makes sense. That's what's important. Okay. All right. Let's see what else. See what else we have here. And the reason I think is anxiety. Okay. So someone here is talking about uh, a possible cause or source or something that may have triggered stuttering for them. Sometimes anxiety is something that may not necessarily cause it. Sometimes people have speaking anxiety that comes out of having stuttered, right? So because they stutter, they're now more anxious about their speech. They're more nervous. Okay, so that may not have been the initial cause, but now they become anxious whenever they have to speak, or whenever they have to speak in certain speaking situations. So that anxiousness triggers the stuttering. That absolutely can be true and is true for many people. Once you re-engineer or reverse engineer that process, which we do in Pro 90D, then you can go in and literally change the way you speak and change the way you think and feel. And both of these things together helps you create new positive speaking experiences, right? Which then you start feeling more confident and more relaxed about your speech, and then you tend to speak better. So it's a cycle, right? You perform better, and then you feel more confident about your speech, which makes you perform better, right? So it's a cycle. Let's see. One day to do face in foreign countries in France, for example. So someone was asking me, would you one day do face-to-face internships? So that's an interesting question. Go ahead and go to my website, send me a message kind of fleshing out what you're asking. Definitely, we are interested in expanding Pro 90D in many different ways. We are global right now. We have people all over the world, and so we are interested in expanding that. So let me know what more you are asking. Okay, so here's someone. Your courses have helped me with preaching at my church. Awesome, awesome. So we really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments for us? Any other questions or comments? Oh, okay. Sorry, Farouk. I just saw that. Sorry. I thought you had left and then I saw your comment. All right. So can you hear us? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Very good. So we're gonna we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? I hope that we've addressed some of the things that you've asked us today. What we'd like for you to, but one thing that I'd like for you to walk away with is the fact that there are probably many different mistakes that you and I both can make when we're trying to achieve a goal, learn a new skill, develop new habits. When it comes to speech, the one big one that we see is a lack of consistency or inconsistency. And that can take many different forms, and we've talked about a few. So it's very important because of neuroplasticity, how our brains can basically create new neural connections and or strengthen other ones. And the areas of our brain that manage our mindset, how we think, how we feel, how we speak, the areas that manage those activities can be, in a sense, changed to create new connections, new networks that then help us create a new way of speaking, a smoother way of speaking. And the only way to do that is to be consistent at certain activities, right? What are those activities? They're in the system, it's in the daily routine. Okay. So, Farouk, any final comments? Let's just see if there's also any questions while you are commenting. Any comments, summary pieces of advice that you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So, as we have already mentioned a lot of the points here, the main reason why we mentioned all of these points, and especially me, that I have worked on my speech with the system, and I have seen a whole lot of students who have worked with the system, and we have made a lot of mistakes at the start. So we hope that if you get into the system, you do not actually repeat the same mistakes. So we are wanting for you to learn from our mistakes and don't repeat those mistakes. So I would really quite strongly recommend you to join the system. It has not only changed my speech, it has changed my whole life. And at the start, I used to feel quite bad about my speech and why I had to really have such a hard time with speaking. But after having worked with this Pro 90D speech system, I feel so good that I had to face stammering, that I had that I had to go with stammering and stuttering, because that was the main reason why I found the system. That was the main reason why I worked on my speech. Maybe if I had not struggled with it, I would not have been working on my speech. I would not have been speaking like this right here. So the main reason why I think I speak well or why the Pro 90D students speak so well is because they had to face speech disfluencies. And that is the best thing that has happened with us. So if you are also right there and you have certain speech disfluencies, you feel very bad, I would say that it is the best thing that has happened. You need to just get into the system. It has given you an opportunity to become an excellent speaker. It has given you an opportunity to become an amazing speaker. And if you really want to reach your goals of the speaker you want to become, I would strongly recommend you to join the system. It has changed our speeches, it has changed our lives, and we want it to work out for more and more people who are struggling with their speeches right there. And just in this webinar, as we mentioned, some of the mistakes which we made, we don't want you to repeat those mistakes. We just want you to learn from what we did wrong and do not repeat it, and just follow the system in the right and smooth way. You are going to experience failures or bumps in the road, as Mr. Michael says. Sometimes you're going to feel like maybe the system isn't working, this or that. But after a while, when you keep working on it on a consistent basis, you're following the whole system, you're working on it on a consistent basis. After a while, you see, wow, now it's starting to really work for me. Now I'm really seeing all the results. I'm speaking well, and it is starting to become more and more automatic. So it's no more a new speaking style, but it's my own speaking style right now.
Mhm.
So I hope you guys found this webinar and this information well. And so these were some of the things that we wanted to discuss here.
Thank you, Farouk. You'll see a couple of links. I believe, Farouk, this is the link that you sent me to your YouTube channel. Is that correct? The one that we see here on the screen? It's, well, they
Hmm.
abbreviated it. Let me,
I think it is. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think it's the correct one. Okay, so that's the link to Farouk's channel, and you guys can go and visit that and check out his videos there. Uh, we'll be adding some of his videos also to our main channel, and you'll see him more and more. He'll be on our website. Again, he's in training to become a coach. So if you're interested in working with Farouk directly, just visit our main website and you'll see a little chat bubble. Okay. And then just send me a message and we'll talk about how to make that happen. We also want to encourage you to at least get started with the self study. Watching the YouTube videos are great, but if you want to really get traction and take your speech further, you need the entire system. Don't try to piece it together. Invest a little bit of money and you'll see great, great returns. Okay. Now, some of you have already been watching the videos, you've gotten your speech to a certain level and you feel stuck. And so this is where the private coaching comes in. So you're going to want to get in touch with us. You may want to work with me personally, or you may want to work with Farouk. Either way, that's fine. But working with us one on one accelerates the process. It makes it faster and easier. That's just a fact. But you still have to do the work. So we want to encourage those of you who want to get started or you need the whole system, then get the self study. Do that now, right? It's a relatively small investment. For those of you that have been working through the systems or videos and you want to take your speech to the next level, then you're going to want to work with us one on one. Okay, so we have the websites there. Thank you, Farouk. Any other
Thank you.
final comments or questions from anyone? Let's see. Okay, great. I think we are ready to go. We're going to also put a link to his channel, a link to the self study, a link to get to the coaching will be in the description of this video. And you can also just go to my website and you'll find all that stuff. Okay. Thank you so much. We will see you all next time.
Okay, bye bye. Thank you.
Thanks.